صباح الخير الجميع or مساء الخير الجميع. Hi everybody, I'm Lara Shiha and welcome to Psychic Militancy. I'm so excited to be joined by comrade and sister Maria Fakhouri today. We're going to get into it, but before we do that, please subscribe to the channel. That helps us get this out there in the midst of all the other, right-wing fascistic propaganda that's out there. And then send it to a comrade, tell them we're online, tell them we're live. Of course, this loads immediately, so you can catch up to it later, but it's always fun to be able to have these conversations in real time and see folks in the chat and interacting. And then subscribe to our channel, subscribe to Patreon, do all the things that allow us to keep doing this. But I'm not going to go any further with this. Everybody knows that you need to do these things on these shows. But Maria, I'm so excited to finally have this conversation with you. Maria and I met online, as one does these days, on Instagram. I think we find each other. We were talking before, like those of us who just don't want to deal with the fuckery of the field. Both of us are in the psychology field. We found ourselves online. We connected. We're like, what the fuck is this thing called neutrality? And then the rest is history. So yeah. How are you this morning?
I am good. I am thriving. It's really, really nice to connect with you. We were talking before this about how we've actually not had a call before this, even though we've been chatting and, conspiring or whatever for a long time in the, by chat. But it's exciting because I feel like all of this energy potential that we have for like you and me and our brains combining is like gonna come out in this, and I'm just so excited.
Yes. Well, I'm excited too because you have a handle called Unfiltered. So that was just like, I like this person. All right, let's see what the unfiltered piece of this is. But I'm glad to hear you're thriving. I mean, I think this is part of it, is like, what does it mean to be right now in the midst of everything? And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that you're never somebody who like forgets, obviously, the magnitude of the violence that's happening, whether that's in Palestine or Lebanon or Iran, not anywhere. But you also have a way of like staying focused. And that's part of the reason why I wanted us to have this conversation, because I feel like our field at large, no matter where we're positioned in this field, is one that really has a counterinsurgent aim of disciplining us, of making us reproduce particular types of discipline. You and I have talked a lot about like, the bullshit of animating or mobilizing concepts such as neutrality. So that was my sort of like, okay, this is why we need to be having this conversation. But I don't know if off the top you want to start off with anything or what you've been thinking about leading up to today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you say that about counterinsurgency. It's so freaking real. So first of all, I never expected to be like a Palestinian therapist. You know what I mean? I was like doing other shit. I was like helping people process their breakups and their OCD and their childhood trauma. I was doing all kinds of things. So I never really saw this coming. But at the same time I did, right? I just thought, I am almost 31. So in my head, I was like, in my 40s, there's going to be a moment and we're all going to have to rise and resist. But that's not how it happened. But anyway, I was working 2 years ago, right out of grad school. In grad school, at the end of grad school, I was hired by my professors to go work for their group practice.
Okay.
And we had a wonderful experience. They loved me. They're always asking me questions. I was like the heart of their fucking practice. And then when all the shit started to go down after Tufan al-Aqsa, the dynamic really changed. But I remember when in the early days, before I kind of like found a groove for myself, I was crying a lot in between my sessions. And they were so alarmed by this. They were just the two white women, genuinely perplexed at like why I am upset, which tells you how little they value our lives. But I remember one time, one of them sat me down in this conversation and she was like, Maria, when you wake up from this, you're going to regret some of the things that you said online during this time.
That's the
when I wake up from this,
right,
I'm asleep and you're awake,
right?
So it's the gaslighting is incredible that I am and that's just one story of like countless stories in the last 2.5 years.
I mean, also just it's such a confessional about the shallow nature of their existence and what they think. Like, imagine that being the thing that you regret in a time that we live where we're seeing genocidal violence, that what we post online is what we regret. That's what I mean about like a confessional. Like, that's the furthest place you all can think. That's number one. But number two is, this is a thing that's really interesting because I think many of us have had this experience, particularly as Arab. There's a huge underrepresentation, particularly in the context of the United States, of Arab. And I'm not talking representational politics here, but it's just fact in terms of like how many of us there are. But I think in general, when you talk about tokenization, whoever is not white and normative presenting, whether they're queer folks or trans folks or racialized folks, there is this way in which the field tries to conscript us, grab us, and there's this like grooming. I was very aware of the fact that people and systems were like, great, we have this person.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing about that is, number one, I was aware, and you're not supposed to be aware of that because they want to be like so generous. They want to be the ones to be giving us space.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so fortunate that you chose me.
Exactly. And so there's all these ways they do that. And then the moment that your politics become clear, man, that shit shuts down so quickly.
So
quickly. Which is precisely what you're talking about.
Absolutely. This same professor, while I worked for her, had me teach her multicultural competency lecture to her master's class. She invited me and she's like, Maria's gonna, can you do this? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I lectured for 3 hours. I got messages in the last 2 years from those students being like, that was one of the best lectures we ever had. And so imagine the level of tokenization that come and teach my students about multicultural competency. And then 2 years later, when the issue at hand is actually multicultural competency, cut, get her out of here.
Because that's not what we mean by it, right? It's like multicultural competent. And this is why I've always been aware that everything breaks on Palestine. Everything breaks on Palestine. And then it becomes, of course, which is an entry point to everything else. But it's always like, oh, wait a second, that's not actually the multiculturalism we're talking about.
Nope.
And I think a lot of folks that I've spoken to have a hard time thinking about this because they're like, but that's hypocritical or there's a contradiction there. But I think ideological processes of power hold contradictions. Like, they were never meant to include actual alignment with resistance, which is what your post that you're supposed to regret are unbending in their support of material resistance. Not just the shit that we do in our clinic tucked away that has no impact on the real world.
Yeah. Well, what they mean by, when they talk about, especially, so I'm in Canada, right? And Canadian multiculturalism is never meant to include Arabs or Palestinians in general. It can include Lebanese people, but not when Israel is bombing them.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? Right. But it's like that multicultural framework exists within the settler colony.
Yes.
Like, you are multicultural within this paradigm.
Yeah.
You can't break the paradigm. Then we have a problem.
Well, and because that multiculturalism also was animated specifically as the anti-Indigenous mode of being. And so that's that is what we are invited into always. I realized this immediately. So I moved to this settler colony of the United States. I had just turned 21. I started graduate school. I was actually evacuated from the siege of Lebanon in 2006. That's how I got to graduate school, right? That's how I started graduate school. But I realized immediately, and I often talk to students particularly about this, that there were so many invitations to become white that I immediately was aware of. Which was a little bit like, I was not socialized in the United States. There's a lot of my comrades that like know these racial codes. And then I get here and immediately I'm aware of all these invitations. And some of them are subtle and I would say somewhat conscious. And then some of them are like very, very in your face, Like, I remember having a student who was in graduate school with me tell me, why are you disavowing your whiteness? And I was like, do you think I'm from like Lebanon, Pennsylvania? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's a difference between being light-skinned, which I get, I'm a light-skinned Arab, and being white.
Right.
But that's that multicultural that's always in contrast or juxtaposition or, of course, in tension with indigeneity, and certainly in the context, everywhere, of anti-Blackness also. So all of these things are at play immediately, which is like
Absolutely.
the invitation, come join our practice. This is a very innocent invitation,
Mhm.
but part of you can't be here.
Yep. Yeah, and not really the fact that, you know, Black friends of mine and colleagues had little issues with those women before, and I think it speaks to my own, I often think back on this of, like, what was going on for me at that time that evidence that they were racist wasn't enough for me to think twice, and I don't blame myself, it's okay. Um, but my Palestinianness had to be reawakened in order for me to see what was happening.
Yeah. So maybe you can say a little bit more about that. Like, you started off by saying, I didn't ever think I was just going to be a Palestinian therapist,
Mhm.
right? Which I think says something about also how we're trained into thinking about identity and all that, and how much it has into play. But now you are. Like,
Yep.
I think people seek you out on Instagram, certainly. You don't shy away from things. So, like, what has been that experience, particularly in the field, as you're just like, "Here you are, motherfuckers. You wanted a Palestinian, you got a Palestinian."
Right? Yeah. Well, okay, part of this has to do with the fact that I am a very intense person. I am intense.
That's why you're here, darling.
Yes. And my own intensity, um, it can and it's also very ancestral, but let me go back a little bit. So, um, for, like, the diaspora Palestinian experience, at least for me, my grandparents, especially my grandfather, my mother's father, Jiddo Sami Holiday, he was always talking about Palestine all my life in the sense of as soon as I was old enough to have an email address, there was an email every day from Jiddo Sami. This is what's happening today in the West Bank. This is what so and so is saying about Palestine, just constant. And so I was always aware, and there would be moments, and the one that really stands out to me is 2021. In 2021, when Israel escalated its siege on Gaza, escalated on the people of Sheikh Jarrah. I rose. I was in grad school at that time in my master's, and I rose. I went to protest every day, and I had this, like, really intense time. And I was, in grad school, um, and I couldn't figure out how to be both these people, because the activist in me, even though I have problems with that word, I'll use it. The activist in me was so fiery and so intense, but I also have to, like, write this paper, and I also have to do practicum. So I literally just didn't know how to do both. So what I did is I was like, okay, I need to put a pause on my activism. And it's hard for me to say this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I went on Instagram and on social media, and I actually muted each and every Palestine account that I followed. Eye on Palestine, Craving I muted all of it because I literally did not, it was, like, going to break my brain to try and exist in both worlds. So, after Tufan al-Aqsa, October 7th, um, for like 2 weeks or so, I wasn't really paying any attention. I knew that something had happened. Okay. I knew that there was some kind of operation, resistance operation. My friends started texting me being like, "Hey, are you okay? We're watching what's happening." And I'm like, "Oh god, it's got to be really bad if my white friends are texting me, are you okay?" So maybe 2 weeks later, I was like, "Okay, let's go. Let's unmute." So I unmute, and I let my Palestinianness just flood in. Knowing that, okay, I expected this moment to happen much later in my life, but it's time to, like, really be a Palestinian. And then something broke, I guess, because I realized, oh, this person is not welcome in this mental health space. Um,
Yes.
and so there's a massive task of integration where I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, how can I be this, like, really strong voice for my people and also tackle this field that wants to erase me?
Right. Which, the fact that there's a massive task of integration, like you just said, begets the question of the disintegration that is demanded of us in this field. Like, that didn't come from nowhere. It's not
Mhm.
like you were just like, oh, this is a failure of mine to hold both of these. And the field asks and demands and makes us believe that a precursor to our competency is us not integrating all those things? Is that somehow all those other things are distractions? The politics is a distraction. You won't be able to learn things about the field as well. You will be, I've heard millions of versions of you, too identified with your patients. You won't be able to, pay attention to the transference, the counter transference. Your technique's going to be off. You're imposing an agenda. Like, I could go on and on and on and on and on. And
Right.
one of the things that I have realized is that, again, this disintegration is actually a specific political project of this field that does not want us to be engaged clinicians. Because if we're engaged clinicians, it means you actually don't have to choose, like, when do I show my, you're fully Palestinian, not at odds with your practice, but as a centerpiece, actually an ethical imperative of our practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it tells you, like, for the field, who is their default client. When they're like, oh, you're going to distract your clients. I'm like, you people, I live in a city with at least, the last time they took a census or something was like, I think it was at like 60,000 Arabs in the city. So you're trying to tell me that it is a distraction to be aware of the political violence that shapes my community's life? What about you? You're not imposing an agenda by, I get so many messages, and one day I'm going to go through and I'm going to, like, put them in a nice archive and organize them and stuff. But I've gotten so many messages from people, both Palestinians, Lebanese, Arabs, white people, all kinds of people being like, my therapist, I tried to bring up the genocide. And my therapist was like, you need to moderate your news intake. And this is actually, what about you? Let's focus on you. What's this bring? Like, I'm imposing an agenda. What about you? You can't even tolerate, you cannot even tolerate your client mentioning the news in your counseling room.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm the one who's fragile, and I'm the one who is temperamental.
That's right. Exactly. I should have called this a lie of neutrality, not the myth of neutrality. Because it's a
What does
fucking
neutrality mean?
lie. Yeah.
If you truly desired to be neutral, you would value all lives equally.
Yeah.
You wouldn't value some lives over others.
Right.
But you do.
It's also when is neutrality mobilized? Because that's also not a neutral thing, right? They have a lot of ways. Folks have a lot of ways, to communicate where they stand on things. I mean, this is what's always been interesting to me, and why I've always found it, like, questionable and suspicious, because I was reared and trained psychoanalytically, meaning the unconscious, like, the most shorthand thing is the unconscious exists, and there are ways in which we do and act and believe in things that might be contradictory, and we don't know all of the reasons why we do that all the time. Very shorthand to it. And all of a sudden, people just throw out their belief in that theory when it comes to something. So if that's it, you think I can't pick up on all the ways you are communicating your position on things, whether that's a class position or political. I mean, all of these are political positions, of course. But that's the thing, I think, that's the most dangerous and fucks with people's minds, is that those in the field who I would say have a normative sort of hegemonic position in the field are those who insist that neutrality is necessary as a mode of proving our competency, and will insist on their innocence when they take these positions that are actually fundamentally opposed to the alleviation of psychic suffering. And they will defend this to the death.
Yep. Yeah. And it's gotten to a point too where, like, they're fucked, kind of, because they have held on to this absurdity for so long that for them to admit that they've been wrong is just, like, deeply embarrassing. And I don't even know if they know yet how embarrassing they're being.
Well, I think sometimes you've exposed a couple of people for their embarrassing positions.
I love it. I love to roast a neutral ass apolitical therapist. I love it. You people, the world is literally on fire in every sense of the word. People don't even know if we're going to be, like, able to inhabit this planet in, like, 20 years. But you people don't want to get political?
Right.
Like, how much longer are you going to hold this line when the floodwaters are coming to drown your office because of the rising sea levels?
Yeah.
At what point? When we run out of water? That's when you want to decide, like,
yes. Well, this was actually when, so my first book with my partner, Stephen, Psychoanalysis Under Occupation, there's one clinician in there who's practicing in Bethlehem, and talks about a instance in which tear gas was coming into the office as he was meeting with his patient. And I wish I were making this up, but the type of people that we are trained by are the very same people that would just sit there and be like, there's if I mention this gas, is this going to like disrupt the transfer? And I'm like, what the fuck are you thinking? Let alone, by the way, the checkpoints people have to go through to get to that therapy session, or which is the parallel. I'm not saying it's the same thing, because there's an outwardness and an intensity to that direct violence that those of us in Turtle Island might not be experiencing on a daily basis. Some of us don't. Many of us do, right? But it's the parallel process. It's the same thing. Like telling people, oh, just look away from the genocide because that's going to, protect your mental health. It's akin to gas coming in. You're just like, what did you have for breakfast today? Or like,
right.
How's your family dynamics going?
Right. Meanwhile, your client's like passed out on the couch.
Yeah, exactly.
And how does that make you feel? They're like unresponsive.
Exactly.
It's absurd. It's really absurd.
Yeah.
Actually, yesterday.
But it's real.
It's very real. Yesterday, I was in session, and this client is just, it wasn't a Palestinian client or anything like that, but I could hear outside the window, because I'm downtown, that there was some kind of protest happening with like Arabic music playing. And I was like, I wasn't aware of any protest today. And so after the session, I went downstairs and I looked down the street, and there are Iranian flags down there. And I was like hearing this music and chanting blasting throughout my whole session. And then to go downstairs later and realize, oh, it's an Iranian protest, and I don't know what kind of persons they are. Right? I don't know. They could be the cool kind, the kind that, doesn't love the empire, or they could be the Zionist kind who, over the weekend in Toronto, had an effigy of a lynched Palestinian. That they have like a literal doll on a stick being lynched with a keffiyeh. Like, that's what the Zionist persons are up to, and they might be having a protest down the street from my office that I can hear through the window. And if that client had been Palestinian, that would have profoundly impacted our feelings of safety in the room.
Right. And in many ways, even as I think this is the thing, right? Is that what part of what you're saying is this saturates our clinical space constantly. And the invitation to be neutral not only denies that reality, but also purposefully, I think this is the thing that I really want to pay attention to, is that in training clinicians, asking people through the guise of neutrality, because that's like a weapon. That's a weapon to make you feel like you're a bad clinician, and it's used over and over and over again, is that you are actually reproducing a social order that teaches clinicians what material is important, what material belongs in the clinical space, and what material does not. And lo and behold, those always happen to fall on political fault lines, while at the same time they're telling us this is a neutral position.
Right.
Because it's predictable.
And it's pseudoscience, like
totally.
Like, I don't think about this at all anymore, really. But in the beginning of this, part of the argument to me about needing to be neutral was that, well, I don't offend Jewish people. And I'm like, that's like the last thing on my mind. I'm trying to fight for my people to live. But the way that you people have decided that we are not even going to risk offending Zionists, we have to let them do what they do in the name of neutrality. It's like, is that psychologically healthy for them either? Like, that's not... Seriously, if you're so concerned about these people, wouldn't you want them to not be psychopathic and not be genocidal and not be murderers?
It's not their concern, really.
No, but they don't care, right? It doesn't matter.
Right.
And so when you say like they're reproducing the system of power,
absolutely,
it's like, okay, well, don't talk about oppression. Yeah. Don't call out the oppressors. And as for the oppressed, let's focus on what they can control.
Yes. But sound bites of self-care, that'll do it. But I think this actually gets into it because we can't talk about neutrality without also, like, again, this is how it's mobilized, who has access to it, who has the luxury for it, and who can never be sort of called out on their non-neutrality, because that itself is a political position. Like, not only when I was first getting into graduate school, but many of my students after the fact would be asked during their interviews, and I'm talking about Arabs now here across the board. Some of them are Palestinian, many of them are not. Without fail, Arabs up front are asked to prove that they can work with Jewish patients. Not even Zionists, by the way. Talk about the collapse between the two. What would it be like for you to work with Jewish patients? Do you think you can? That is a standard question up front. And never is the question asked, certainly of Jewish students, which you shouldn't, because those things are like fucking fucked up, because they function on presumptions of prejudice up front.
Yeah.
But that's the point, is like, neutrality functions from a place of power, and who it tasks to constantly prove that they are neutral. And it never matters, because, okay, the position is like, no, I'm not. First of all, the power imbalance. Like, what are you supposed to say as a trainee or somebody trying to get into a graduate program? What's going to be my position? Is this a good faith conversation from the beginning?
Right. You're operating on a racist stereotype from the beginning. A
Yes.
racist stereotype that is so old.
Yeah.
It's pathetic.
Absolutely.
And also think about, are they asking the same thing about queer people? What's it going to be like for you to work with a gay client?
Right.
You know, how many like conservative right-wing people go into this field? Are they being asked the questions about queer people and how they can work with them? Are white people being asked, how are you going to work with Black clients?
Right.
So that's not neutral. You're asking,
No,
are you going to be neutral? But you asking the question is not even neutral.
Exactly. It's all bullshit. It's a lie of neutrality. So I know a little bit about this, but I'd love to hear you talk, like, pushing up against structures of power or things that ossify as is, right? Because our field if it's replicating these models, if there are ways through training, through knowledge production, through conversations, through discourse, that it maintains its stability, there's a price to pay to be a disruptor to that. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the bullshit fuckery you've got for being a disruptor.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, first is just any sense of financial stability went out the window for 2 years. After I was terminated, because even though I went in, I was fired on a Friday. By Monday, I opened my private practice, right? And I didn't go into this field thinking I was going to run a business. Like, you know, they don't. So just that situation, right? Like my stability, my financial stability, poof, gone, right? And only now I'm with a new group practice, because I don't want to do admin. That's just not my thing. I want to sit in the chair and talk to people and do the work. So it took 2 years, and my quality of life just, you know what I mean? I was eating like, what was I eating? You know, I started to live very frugally because I had to. So there was that piece. But then there's the piece around being attacked by the Zionist lobby, which other Palestinian psychotherapists in my area have also received, where these Zionist lobbies are sending complaints to our licensing board, calling us anti-Semitic, and they'll send like entire packages of like various things I've said on the internet to my licensing board, and then we have to fight them. So then there's time that goes into like putting a case together and responding to these people, and it's a lot, and it makes me very angry. But also, fuck, bring it on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are some of the things they say? Because it's not to give them like more airtime, but the absurdity of it. And I do think part of the point is to keep us busy, because I've had the same experience. Not only do you get overloaded on every single platform, complaints to for me, the American Psychological Association, licensing board, employer. My previous employer, had said, yeah, we got, like, after Tufan al-Aqsa, they're like, we got a whole stack. There was somebody on my Instagram taking photos of this. Like, trying to get me kicked off of listservs, uninvited from talks, some of which has worked, some of which has not. But the point is to keep us busy, which derails us. But I know you got some tricks up your sleeve, but like, what are some of this shit that they're saying? Just because I like people to know the mechanics of this. Because it's one thing to just say, we get an onslaught, and we do. And I think a lot of people now expect it. This has been happening way before October 7th, by the way, right?
Yep.
But has intensified because I think Zionists are emboldened. And a lot of what happens for folks to know is that a lot of these like makeshifts, they look like grassroots organizations pop up, but they're actually supported by these larger astroturf Zionist organizations who target people and say, go after this person. And then we'll set up a website that says, here, send an email to the licensing board. And then they'll brag and say, we've sent 2,000 emails or whatever the fuck the case is. But what are some of the shit you've seen? And what are some of the tricks up your sleeve that you got to fight back?
Oh, well, they, the most recent one, it seems like they went through all my social media and just searched the word Jewish and just submitted everything I said, which is hilarious because some of the things that they've submitted are like really good, I think. Like they've like really like taken my greatest hits. I'm so serious.
You can't make this shit up.
No, you really can't. Like lately, I think because of the fucking right-wing weirdos that you got running that fucking United States of America, and like Elon Musk and stuff, there is a legitimate rise in Nazism, which is legitimate. And so I went on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I don't even like going on that website, but I went on there a few months ago because somebody that I used to kind of like have a friendship with, somebody like another activist for Palestine, started to get very Nazi-esque. And I was like, oh boy, I don't want to be associated with this because that's not my belief system. So I went on there and I started talking about, okay, listen, we don't distinguish between Judaism and Zionism in the interest of protecting Jewish feelings. It's that Nazism is Zionism. They're just like two sides of the same coin. And so we reject it because we reject all systems of supremacy.
All fascist systems of supremacy.
Right. And this is what the Zionists are submitting to my licensing board. They're like, she said that Zionism equals Nazism and we shouldn't be Nazis. And I'm like, what's your problem? I thought you were really concerned about the Nazis. Isn't that your whole story? Or, oh, there's one that they really didn't like, which was, I wrote a post a while ago and I said that there can never be peace between Palestinians and Israelis. There can only ever be peace between Palestinians and ex-Israelis. And I said that the term Israeli is genocidal from the beginning. And they really didn't like that. So now I have to defend myself against that. I'm like, well, there's an Israeli who's living in my teta's home somewhere.
Right.
So, because she wasn't supposed to be there. She was supposed to be killed or kicked out, which was the truth in the end. But it's like, these people are living in the homes of people they murdered, but you want to tell me that your national identity isn't genocidal from the outset?
Right.
So this is the kind of shit. So they submitted a whole onslaught of, again, every time I've ever mentioned the word Jewish, they've brought it in there. And they also included a speech that I gave where I guess I said our glorious resistance at some point in the speech, and they really did not like that. So how am I combating it? I'm a fucking good writer and I know what I'm talking about.
That's the thing. That's like miraculously staying focused on our actual cause and our points and not bending over backwards to sort of fight on their terms. Because part of what you're saying, and this is really important, this is why I think I started to think about psychic militancy, is when people present you with this, there's this entire, this being, I'm fighting you on these words that you said. There's an entire infrastructure that supports that as the position. And then we're always positioned to argue or prove our point, and then asked to think that this is a fair conversation that we are having, right? I have a dear comrade, Dylan Rodriguez, who talks about lexical warfare. That's what he's talking about. It's an entire area of warfare that I think is also part of psychological warfare. But that's the point, is like the premise is flawed to begin with. But you are asking me to engage as though this is just a conversation that starts here. And what you're saying is like, no, actually, I mean what I say, because if you have a project, a white supremacist, ethno-nationalist, eliminationist project of Zionism that's instantiated by a state, that is a genocidal project. That is a genocidal ideology. And I stand behind that. You know?
Yeah.
It's amazing because there's so many, I think you and I connected on this, but there's so many similarities in how this happened. So one of the things, so my, Stand With Us, this massive Zionist organization, came after me in January 2023. This is after like 6 months of, this being sort of poked at from, I think it started really actually in October 2022, but it hit the, right-wing sphere in January 2023 when Stand With Us picked it up. And the things they've been trying to peddle since then have to do with my previous posts on Twitter, that you read them and they're like, this is descriptive. Like, fuck Zionism. This was a fuck Zionism. It was after the blast in August 4th in Lebanon, August 4th. I guess it was 2022.
Yeah.
That it happened. Or maybe even, 2022, I think. Either way, being like the IOF had tweeted, our hearts are with Lebanon and we want to send aid or something. And I saw that and I lost my fucking shit. And I said something along the lines of like, you fucking genocidal monsters, like commit to dismantling Zionism and then we'll talk, you genocidal fucks. Right? Yep. And it's just like, for me, that's a descriptive statement. You are pretending you give a fuck about anything that happens in Lebanon as the IOF. Well, and let's extend that right now to what's happening in Lebanon, a ground incursion where you're trying to land grab and create a greater quote unquote Israel. But those tweets have become like the centerpiece of their obsession. Yes. And what happens with that is not only are then we asked to drag in and like defend, which I refuse to do. I'm like, I'm not getting into this. Yep. But liberals then pick that up and then go, oh my gosh, that really is an aggressive tweet. That is a really aggressive. Yeah, somebody put 2020 August 4th. I cannot believe it's been 2020 was the blast. I can't believe I can't even remember and excavate from that. Thank you, Jacques. But that's the piece. We get mired into this, but more so, I think it's on purpose because it's an invitation to liberals to join fascists, because that's what they end up focusing on. Then they'll focus on you saying Zionism is a supremacist ideology, and that's what Nazism was too. That's what they'll start focusing on.
Absolutely. You're so right in that they have these, it's funny because it's so true. They have a few tweets or a few posts and they just keep sending them. It's like, damn, you people, I have way more range than this. You should send other shit. I got so much more that you can send. And they will pull up some shit.
They're sloppy as shit.
Oh my God, they're pathetic. And they're so lazy. Like they have this speech of me that they're mad about, the speech that I gave in January or February of 2025. It's like, really? So 1 year later now you're mad about this speech that I gave? And they want, that's the thing, is they want us on the defense, and I just fundamentally refuse. The audacity in the sense of Zionists are going to do what Zionists do. Okay, I don't expect them to change. I don't expect that. But the systems that we work under and the systems that license and regulate us, you people mean to tell me that I have been watching my people be massacred on my cell phone for 2.5 years. I am serving my community, a population that you are willfully ignoring and neglecting. You've offered no condolences, no compassion, no training for anybody. So all of this is on me, right? Me and my few Palestinian colleagues to serve our traumatized population while we ourselves are also traumatized, while we ourselves are also under attack. And the one time you want to message me is to send me this complaint from the Zionist lobby. And now you want to hear what I have to say? Okay, buckle up. You're going to get a fucking education. I'm not going to be here like, here's why I'm not anti-Semitic. No. I'll answer your questions about my alleged anti-Semitism. But first, let's go back to 1948. So my response to this is going to be a history lesson. Because we deserve not to be on the defense anymore. This is our right. What am I defending myself against?
Yeah.
Who told you that I don't have Jewish clients? And where is your concern for the anti-Zionist Jewish people whose families are cutting them off? Nowhere. No concern for them. They're not the right kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So no, I just fundamentally refuse to move from a place of apologetics and self-defense. No. It's time for you people to answer as to why you do not think that our people are worthy of culturally competent psychotherapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your
And
turn.
how that's like constitutively baked in to the process. And no version of pretzeling ourselves. Like I haven't pretzeled myself for a very long time, but I remember in graduate school, probably like you do, like you were saying, the invitations to do that and the internalization that somehow there was a different way to do this. If we could soften ourselves, if we could speak a different way, if I could just say this differently, maybe I am the one who's aggressive. Maybe I am the one who's, maybe I do read too much into this. I spent a lot of time doing that in graduate school. I've not done that for a long time, precisely because the lie is so clear, and it's never been more clear than it is now.
Absolutely.
There's no version other than full submission. You want me to become a Zionist, or you want me dead and gone. And I'm not doing either of those things.
Sorry. Oops.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I think part of what helped me to just immediately just become so fiery is that I'm queer.
Yeah.
I'm queer and I grew up in church, right? In the Arab Orthodox Church. And I was deeply religious, okay? Deeply. My family my family has like deep roots. We're Palestinian Christians, right? So it's the faith is it's not that it's not important to me, it is. But I couldn't be within that institutional structure because I was gay and they kept telling me, all kinds of things about how this is sinful and you're going to be far away from God and na. But meanwhile, I saw all the bullshit that was also happening in the church. You know what I mean? Like the metropolitan of the Antiochian Orthodox Church was fully having an affair with some woman for like many, many years. And that news broke around the time that I came out. And so I had just gotten so used to protecting myself internally, that psychic militancy from the church's institutional gaslighting, that when it came time at the end of 2023 for me to realize the situation I was in this field, I was like, oh, this is the same. Western psychology is a toxic religion in the same way that a homophobic Christianity is a toxic religion. It's the same. And they'll appeal to whatever, our ethical code says we have to be neutral or whatever. They'll appeal to something the way that
right.
queer-phobic Christians will like appeal to the Bible or whatever.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, oh, okay, I know how to deal with this.
Yes. Yeah. That's such a great point, because in the same ways they're demanding a particular type of subjectivity out of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that subjectivity is through domination and through prescription. And you're not allowed to, like, I always say this, there is no half-assing Zionism or white supremacy. It asks you to join in full force. And if you don't, you will be considered a disruptor, a dissident, and you will be targeted for that. And
Yep.
and they're very clear on the things that they don't like. Like one of the sort of part of the Zionist Mirror campaign, some of it was just straight up Zionist. Actually, most of it were straight up Zionist and continue to be. And then the liberals who are like anti-communist, pro-cop, pro-United States. That's what they would say. Like, Lara is, I wish I could make this up. This was actually written in like listservs and stuff like that. Like, Lara is uniquely positioned to hurt psychology because she is anti-Israel, anti-capitalist, anti-America, anti-cop. And I'm like, that's quite a confession. I do happen to be all those things because I'm a leftist and an anti-imperialist, and I'm clear on where the source of suffering of the world comes from. Mm-hmm. Racial capitalism, imperialism, and settler colonialism, and patriarchy. Like that, yeah, you're right about that. But they're positioning that as directly linked to the downfall of psychology. For me, is a fascinating confession.
Right. So they're trying to say that psychology is Israeli, capitalist. What are the other things?
Imperialist.
Yes.
Patriarchal.
And a cop structure. It's like, yeah, you're right. That is what, and what's funny is the way that they say psychology. It's like, you people realize that there's other countries in the world that have psychology that isn't
psychology, exactly.
That isn't like yours. Has that occurred to you? I remember when I started I don't know when it was, in 2024, because I had to do a lot of unlearning really quickly. And I also had to find, like, this is probably how I found you, is like, I need to find like role models in this field. And part of what I looked into was the like liberation psychology of Latin America. Right. And I remember hearing from some Latina psychologist, she was like, we say psychologies. We say it in the plural. Because there are different psychologies. Because this one, the one that they're saying that you're gonna bring down, like, yeah, you know what? They might be right. You are a threat to that psychology, but that's not the only psychology in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, then that's the white supremacist imaginary, that like it's the only the boundaries of the field of gaze that I see is what exists in the world, which is what happens all the time, you know. And you've probably heard this in a white Eurocentric global North circles. They're obsessed with being like, there's a renaissance of Fanon. Frantz Fanon is now back. And I'm like, he never went anywhere. For those
Back
of us
for
who
you.
are committed, yeah, including or Martin Baro or anybody who's committed to liberation or anti-colonial psychologies, like you're saying, has always known this work. You are confessing where this was in your own imaginary, that you call it a renaissance. And that's colonialism 101. I see it, therefore it must be the first time it's seen.
Right. Let's put it in the museum with the other shit that we stole.
Exactly.
It's pathetic. It's really pathetic. I remember in grad school one time in that 2021 era, at the beginning of our practicum classes, and we were all on Zoom. This was like deep COVID times. And the professor would do like a check-in at the beginning of the lecture, be like, how is everyone? What have you been up to? And, you know, because we're therapy trainees, we talk about how we're feeling and what's filling our cup or whatever. And so I mentioned, not thinking, I guess, whatever, being like, yeah, you know, I was at a protest for Palestine on the weekend and it felt really empowering, And the professor, a white man, looks at me. Okay. And what about you? What did you do this week? Like, just shocked, offended, terrified. Like the reaction is just, are you people okay? Like, you people need help, not me. You're scared at the mere mention of the word Palestinian.
That's right. That's right.
That's very unwell.
Yes, I know. You can't even metabolize it. But these are the ways I think this is actually a really important point that you're making, because we can sort of roll our eyes, and we should, at their and roast them, like you said, about their inability to even metabolize a, you know, Palestine as a concept, let alone a material reality of Palestine populated by Palestinians. But I think part of it is also, this is how the field is responsible in the carceral logics of disciplining people, because you have your warrior history running through you, and you know, and you are clear on this. And yet that sort of dismissive act of moving to somebody else, not being able to metabolize it, is not accidental. It is meant actually to put you in your place. It is meant to say, this has no space here. It is a disciplinary project that will consist, that's what happens when, and I will never forget in grad school reading a textbook. It was like a social psychology one. And there was an example about the Sabra and Shatila massacres. And part of what they said, and this is the casual mainstreaming of Zionism in textbooks across, which is another thing, like the casual way, talk about non-neutrality, the casual way in which Zionism and Israel, by the way, is overrepresented in these books. Like, they're always like, we're a small little country. And I'm like, then why do you show up in every single fucking textbook? Right? This is not new. It's a mainstreaming of a particular type of supremacy.
Absolutely.
That textbook said that Sabra and Shatila was a PR nightmare for Israel. That's how they talked about it. And then I was positioned as aggressive because I was like, this is offensive and racist. And I was intent on calling it a massacre and sort of bringing it in and being like, can we talk about the ways in which this world view is actually drawing us in as clinicians to pay attention to particular narratives and prioritize certain state positions, not even like particular, like state. This is a state propaganda tool. This is nothing else.
Yeah.
But then that's the point. It's like the parallel of like, let me move away from you. The version of that for me was, you're bringing politics into this. This doesn't belong here. This is not psychology. This, this is
Mhm.
you. This is your agenda. And then in my final, evaluation, being like, Laura's aggressive because she brings these things up.
Incredible. Incredible. Hey, how dare you? You're so aggressive. Your people were massacred, and you shouldn't talk about it because that makes you aggressive. Well, who massacred my people? Don't ask about that. That's political.
The truth telling becomes what's aggressive, not the actual act.
Right. Well, they're just so fucking fragile. They are so fragile. Well, I always go back to something that you brought to my awareness, which is that Western psychology is built for the traumatizer and not
Yes.
for the people that they traumatize. Right.
Yes.
And that is why at McGill University in Montreal, a few months ago, this picture went around. One of my comrades posted it of, in one of their TV screens that they have in the halls of the university, was this mental health service that was being advertised for Jewish and Israeli trauma. In the back to school, it was like, back to school, we're offering this service, and they got this massive backlash being like, well, what about the Palestinian trauma? And so then they fixed it and they added, here's a processing group for Jewish and Israeli trauma, and here's one for Palestinian identifying people. Palestinian identifying. Okay.
Can't even muster saying Palestinian.
No. I'm confused. I'm identifying that way, but it's like an opinion that I have,
Yes.
I'm not actually indigenous. And somebody asked me recently, I was having a talk with a therapist on the West Coast of Canada, and she was like, why are they like this? Like, what is going on? And I'm like, you have to understand that McGill, which is, they say it's the Harvard of Canada, which whatever. But McGill is one of the biggest, most like prominent universities in Canada. And that is the place where there was the first psychology program in this country, however many years ago, in the 1800s, something like that. And people have to understand that the beginning of Western psychology in these settler colonies is that they built the university on stolen land, and they built the university on the graves of the indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
So their psychology begins with a lie.
Yeah.
It begins with the lie of neutrality. McGill University, to this day, I'm going to butcher this story, so look it up. Like, don't take my word for the details, but it was something to do with like the indigenous people of that region were trying to either like plant a tree at the university, which they have like the right to do, or they had a tree that the school was trying to uproot. And it's like, you're wondering why Canadian psychology, academic psychology, won't acknowledge the genocide in Gaza, in Palestine, in Lebanon, and
right.
It's built on a lie.
Yes. Montreal also was Montreal definitely, but also McGill had an experimental lab that tested psychological operations on people and injected folks, including Black folks and Indigenous folks, with, drugs to sort of experiment on things and experiment on, find out how drugs worked and all these things. And that's why, it's not pedantic when we say the field is built on the theft and plunder of Indigenous Black people and people of the global South. And that our reclamation needs to be a forceful one. Not because we want Eurocentric psychologies, but because there have always been Indigenous practices that take up the issue of the psyche and the self and debates within our cultures that take these issues up. And of course it's only the racist who thinks that somehow this exploratory reflective process only belongs in Europe.
Right. Absolutely. No, it's the racism in these programs is ridiculous. I have a friend and a colleague who is a Black woman, and she is just at the end of her clinical psychology PhD, and she is the second Black woman in the history of that program to be admitted.
Yep.
Imagine the pressure, and she handles it like a star. Not that she should have to, but it's like, okay, these programs are profoundly racist. The university is profoundly racist. Psychology is profoundly racist.
Yes. And this is not a thing of the past. I think this is which is a story that psychology tells, right?
Mhm.
This is of the past. Oh, these are the mistakes we made. We quote unquote let gay people in. You know, gay is not a psychopathology anymore. And yet, there are psychologists right now and psychoanalysts, because that's my field, and fuck you if I'm going to let you get away with this. There are psychoanalysts right now working with the state in the context of the United States and in other places in the world, like Australia, like the UK, I think in Canada too, to write anti-trans bills.
Of course.
Right now.
Mhm. As we speak, they're probably having a meeting somewhere.
Yes.
This is your neutral psychology without an
Yes.
agenda.
Precisely. And aiding the genocide. There are architects everywhere we look in psychology, which is why, again, we talk about like wrenching this from the architects of the Eurocentric psychology, not because psychology itself is not useful. I think we theoretically to think about the ways the psyche works, identifications, contradictions, these are all things, again, our peoples across the board have been engaged in for centuries. This is not new.
Yeah.
The Eurocentric version of psychology is one, like you just said, that was a lie from the beginning because it is premised on a supremacy of whiteness. That's why phrenology, using assessments to prove that white people are superior to Black folks, experimenting on bodies, being hand in hand with oppressive and fascist states and coups against leftists, like that is the story of a Western Eurocentric psychology.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I talk about psychology on social media, I'll often get comments being like, no, psychology is bullshit. It's an oppressive structure. I'm like, this is so sad because what it means is that people think that psychology as a whole is synonymous with this like Eurocentric bullshit.
Right.
Like actually, the Europeans and the settlers don't own the study of the mind and the spirits. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, they are like the least mature of any people. So it's the least mature psychology that there is. Because I will not throw away psychology. Like at all. I love psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it has taken me this far. And so much of what I do on social media has been like informed by my own knowledge of psychology. Like a lot of what I do on Mar Unfiltered for people who follow me there is I post like memes and quotes and because I realized early on that I can process my feelings about what's happening in the moment by putting together these quotes that come to me in a carousel post, and I emit that energy into the internet, and people take strength from it and hope, and they kind of get a peek into my world and how I'm processing, and that gives them strength.
Mm-hmm.
And I am that way because I'm a fucking deep thinker, and I love thinking about psychology and what's going to get people to endure and continue to resist and to fight back against the defeatism that they so badly want us to have.
Yes, that they sow inside of us. I think this is like our connecting is an important piece of this, because I think in the face of a global project of dismemberment, to make us all feel isolated, which is a project of Eurocentric white supremacist psychology as well. Like you are an individual and you live alone and you're isolated. And that's why, by the way, folks, you feel like fucking shit because you live alone and there are no possibilities of connection. But even in defiance of like, we've never met in person, but like when you're committed to a larger cause, even if that cause is not, I think, upfront at first, we might not have the words for it or distill it, but we are committed to a political project. That political project is liberation. That political project runs through Al-Quds and against settler colonialism writ large, against oppressive systems, against the conditions that would allow ICE death squads to kidnap people in front of our eyes, to allow settler colonialism to continue to disappear Indigenous women every single day.
Mm-hmm.
The condition that creates a settler colony now known as Canada, and that pretends that it's nice or nicer than the United States. All those things. But us connecting on that level, like I laugh so much looking at your memes because they're fucking funny as shit. But it's a recommitment to that alignment because I know what's behind it. It's not just an indulgent, like, oh, I'm just laughing so I can turn off my brain. It's this person knows and I trust their politics. Like, I trust your politics to be committed. And that's what allows us to have those moments of self-sustenance. We need to sustain ourselves, like you're
Absolutely.
saying. But the politics are first.
The politics are first. Exactly. Exactly. Once we know that we're on the same page and what we're working towards, then we can laugh together.
Yeah.
You know? And so like a lot of people will ask me, Maria, like you laugh so much, like you have so much energy. Like, how are you not raging? I'm like, I am. And if you catch me at a certain time of day or whatever, you might get that side of me because she's always within and I can bring that out. But my like laughter and my joy, it comes from I don't know what philosopher said it, but somebody said the most intelligent and tactical response to life's horrors is to laugh defiantly at it. And so my laughter is defiance. Like, you people are so dumb. You people are just so delusional that it's hilarious and we're gonna beat you in the end. Because your lies are unsustainable. And so like yeah, I'm gonna take the piss on you because it's pathetic. And in 10 years, 20 years time, people are gonna look back and be like, oh wow, we apologize and we were wrong. No, 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 no. And everyone will always be against this. And we'll be like, we were laughing at you people 20 years ago.
And they do, I gotta say, I think it's important for us to see the meltdowns that happen the second you disrupt the narrative, when you dare sort of laugh. I mean, it just happens in front of your eyes. So for anybody who wonders, like, what's the point? The meltdowns that happen are a big clue for us. You know, like spending time to go through your social media and going through and submitting that to sometimes I'm just like, damn, you guys, like, you're thinking about us all the time.
Why are you so obsessed with me? For real though. They're like
Talk about a meme.
and I was like, why are you so no, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what is their identity if not hating on us? You know?
Right.
They hate us because they ain't us.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think that's the settler. If the settler on every level understands, no matter how much you are not of this land. And that's the sort of the anger, the hate, the revenge, the envy that comes from not being able to be an indigenous, which is why there needs to be a whole infrastructure of that. Like, I always say this, living in the settler colony that is now known as the United States, and then going to Palestine and seeing the overlay of that settler colony, the two places that I've seen the most flags that have to prove, like, they put a flag fucking everywhere. Everywhere. They have tiny flags, they have big flags, they have like every version of a flag that you could think of. And I'm like, nobody who's indigenous to the land, like, Palestine didn't even have a map drawn by Palestinians until like the 1970s or 80s, because like, this is your fucking land and you know it. And for anybody who wants to read about this, Linda Kikiewicz has a beautiful book called Palestine for 1492, a report back, in which she draws this out. She's a geographer. But that's the point, is like, people know this. People know their land. They know where the trees end. They know where the borders are. Like, only a settler needs to draw those lines to remind themselves, I am of this land.
These are our borders. Yeah, it's pathetic. And like, I'm not here to center settlers or anything like that, but it's really a shame because, I have clients who, are like white settlers and they've been my clients for years and years. And so when everything started, with Palestine, at least for me and my like uprising and stuff, I was open about it. I was like, listen, I'm going through a bit of a hard time. You might, I might not be my usual kind of like bubbly self in session for a little bit, whatever. And some of them, I didn't ask them to, but they went on to follow me. They asked if they could. I said, of course you can, if you would like to. There's no pressure to. And they would report back, be like, I feel more empowered at work. I'm standing up for myself at work because I'm watching what you're doing. And it allowed, and I've had really interesting conversations with clients of mine who are white men. And, one of them said to me, I hope that it's okay for me to say this, but sometimes I'm jealous. because you have such a sense of rootedness and such a sense of culture, and I don't know where I come from. And I can't look back on my ancestry. I can't go back, I'm from such and such a country, historically somewhere in Europe, but I don't have any connection to that. And so it's a, not that this should have to be a thing of like, it hurts white people too, but a decolonial psychology is healing for everyone because it goes right up against that isolation that they want. And to heal that kind of like settler jealousy that comes from just like a deep sense of emptiness.
Yes. Yeah. And alienation, right? I mean, it's a project of alienation, and that's white supremacy. There's a reason why we have the birth of a Eurocentric psychology that is obsessed with self-knowledge and all those sorts of things at the expense of the community, which is the project with the state to make a citizen subject that is easily controllable, targetable, reproduces a particular social order, disciplines everybody else around. Like, why do you need police if you got everybody else to do the policing?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. With science and the church, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can't forget those.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? All of these institutions of like pseudo spirituality.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what they are.
Yeah. So where are you at right now? Like, okay, so you said Tawfan al-Aqsa, you're uprising. I mean, I know you're just like resistance in Palestine didn't start on October 7th, nor did the Zionist entity genocidal warfare. You sort of marked this as, okay, I knew I needed to like rise up, but clearly this has been in you for, from your ancestry and from just your family. Yeah. But where are you at right now? Like what's
okay.
What's the moment? Where's the pulse right now?
Okay. The pulse is that I am rebuilding my career, which is exactly why. Well, not to say that my career collapsed. It's nuanced. But for 2 years, I was like, I have the clients that I have, and I'm not gonna like, it's not my focus right now to be like a full-time psychotherapist seeing like 15, 20 clients a week. I just put my heart and soul into like being on the streets. I was telling my mom earlier today about how we're gonna have this conversation, and she's like, "Lot I mean," and I was like, she wrote this book Ma called From the Clinic to the Streets, and she was like, "That's you," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's me," So it was very much that. And then, a few months ago, I was just like, okay, you know what? I want to get back to working more as a therapist. So I had someone reach out to me, someone named Justin, reached out to me when I started telling my story of my termination and how racist it was. And he reached out to me. He said, "Hey, why don't you come work with us?" And I was like, "Who are you? What do you mean?" And so I followed up and I messaged him, and turns out he has the 3rd largest group practice in Ontario or in Canada. I can't remember. But so that practice is called Building Bridges Psychotherapy. And I met with him, and he was like, "I love what you do. And the least I can do is provide a professional home for you so that you can do your work and not fear for your stability and your safety." And so in December, I drove out to Mississauga, where they're based, because they have different locations across Ontario, and I went to their Christmas party. And I gotta tell you, I walked in, and I was like, "Oh my God." It was like looking, and maybe this is awful, I don't know, but it was like, the new Band-Aids that they made with all the different skin tones? I was like, wow. And I was like the 4th Palestinian therapist that they have. I walk in there, and there's a therapist speaking Arabic behind me. I turn, "Hey, what's your name?" She's like, "Oh, I'm so-and-so, I'm Lebanese." And just to be in a space where diversity was real and not bullshit, and I wasn't a token, I just, I relaxed. So now I'm in a place where I'm rebuilding my practice. I'm trying to, because so many people are looking for a therapist like me, and I know that.
That is true. I get the requests every single day.
Right. It's desperate, but they want to make us be quiet. It's like, hello, people are trying to work with us, and you are here trying to get in my way, right? Like,
yes.
So that's really right now is I'm just focused on getting back in the groove as a therapist, because I love being a therapist.
Yes.
And it's while the stories of the way we are oppressed in this field are important to share, I think the victory and the rising again and thriving is just as important to show people that it is possible.
Absolutely.
So that's really, now I am
Yeah.
thriving. Like, that's why, you said, how are you? I'm like, I'm thriving. That's the plan.
Yes. Yeah. See, it's so important what you're saying, because I think that part of the larger project is to make us believe that we have to compromise to be able to thrive, that that's the only way. And one of the things, I think both of us probably defied that in different ways being trained, which is why we were, not good therapists or thought about in a larger structure.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think I always say that Zionists miscalculated when they attack folks who are committed to the cause, not as a side gig, is that they overlook actually the networks of solidarity that you end up building. And I'm not saying this as like a Pollyannish way. It truly does open up other possibilities
Absolutely.
that tell us, actually, you don't need to compromise. Your full politics not only are welcome here, but are necessary here as part of the work that we do in this field. And I've seen that over and over and over again. And my commitment to the field, to junior folks, is like, that's what I want to be for folks. Like, people will reach out and I'm just like, that's my ethical responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
is to be like, you don't actually have to compromise. You need a recommendation letter, I got you. You want to help writing and mentorship because everybody else you have to rely on you're going to be indebted to them, I got you.
Yep.
We will do all of this. Like, just because we went through the fucking shit is just like, no, we live in a different world. We can divest from these systems. We can create our own networks. We have created our own networks. We don't need to rely on referrals from white supremacists. We don't have to bend our politics. We live in a different world. And that is the call. That is the call right now, is like, no, you actually don't have to compromise anything. And you want to be a fully aligned clinician that is just as committed to resistance as a part of your work, not as a side project. We got you.
We got you. It will happen. Because I think to your point about the miscalculations of Zionists and supremacists, is they don't realize that the firmer they try to grip on to their idea of what psychology should be, the more irrelevant they are becoming. Yes. We're dealing with a world where AI is running rampant, doing God knows what. Somebody asked me one time, do you think that AI could be a therapist? And I'm like, well, it depends on the therapist. Because if we're talking about, the state-sanctioned therapist, right, that's going to CBT you so you feel qualified to go back to work. Yeah, I think CBT,
you can probably do that.
Yeah. AI could be that therapist that makes you a good cog in the machine. Yeah. But the people who are paying attention, which the propaganda of the state can only hold people for so long. So many people have woken up in the West, and it's only going to become more and more obvious, no matter how hard they try and how much money they're going to pour into the propaganda. Mm-hmm. People are not going to pay a robot to do therapy when they could have a robot for free. So, money isn't everything, and fuck capitalism and all of that. But in terms of where are people going to go? Who do they want to speak to when it comes to surviving mentally in this world, in this era in history? It's people like us who are facing reality and feel competent to navigate it psychologically.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone has to compromise. I think you should be exactly who you are as a clinician, because that's what people are looking for.
Absolutely. I mean, I heard this all the time. There were so-called colleagues who would tell me, oh, but if you're sort of outright in being an anti-Zionist, anti-imperialist, anarchist Marxist, clinician, anti-capitalist, anti-cop, right? All the things that are on my Canary Mission page, of course, too. But what if people don't come to you? And I'm no joke would be like, well, then they'll go to you. There are plenty of us, there are a lot of you. There have been historically less of us outwardly saying these things because the field has made it such that somehow, again, that promise of neutrality, whereas like you have no problem being very clear about where you stand, from your fees to where you have your practice, to who you accept into your practice, to who you refer to, who do you think of when you have referrals, who do you not think of at all?
Right.
I think that's part of it. And this is the thing, is just like, there are a lot of people who are explicitly looking for folks who are not shy about their politics, because a lot of the quote unquote politics that people bring are a matter of like life or death in the hands of the state.
Yeah. Yeah. What these people are calling politics, like, oh, we can't be political. It's like, we're talking about like whether people are killed or not by a fascist army.
Yes.
So if that's political to you, that's fine. Good luck with that. If a Zionist wants a Zionist therapist, they can go get one.
Right.
If a Nazi wants a Nazi therapist, they can go find one. There's plenty.
Yeah. And they're not shy about fucking saying that.
Right.
You know?
So I am not worried.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, the future in this field is ours, and let them be intimidated by that, and let them be threatened, and let them throw their tantrums. I'm not the one who's choosing to be irrelevant forever.
I always say this, they're choosing their power rather than relevance, but that is the history of white supremacy. It's just like, okay, this is what happens. Somebody said, I put it up, I got to start using Canary Mission instead of Psychology Today. And I was just like, I always say this, it's also a great, like, if you want to date comrades, look at Canary Mission.
They haven't put me on there yet. The Zionists haven't put me on. I'm like, what did I do wrong? Like, what?
Do you know why? It's because they're fucking lazy. And this is the thing. It's like, I think a lot of folks, and I'm not trying to downplay the ways in which Canary Mission works with the state. We know that they flag people and,
it's a network.
They have been using it to kidnap some folks. But like all power, it also is completely arbitrary in the way that it works, right? Yeah. And if you look on there, like my Canary Mission page or somebody else's, it's so lazy and based on salacious quotes that they think are going to be offensive. Right. But for those of us who are politically aligned, kind of like what you're saying about your tweets, those of us who are politically aligned, you read it and I'm like, this is just descriptive.
That's the thing. It's like they really think they ate. And I'm like, I'm just here being like, Zionism is Nazism. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if we're defining it as a white supremacist ideology of eliminationism, this is like, that's what I mean about descriptive processes that are taken as offensive are a reflection of the person's own political position, even if they constantly want to say this is a neutral position.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Maria, as we wind down, is there anything else that we haven't gotten to? I mean, I've been having a blast just talking to you in general. And having these be public-facing conversations, I think, are really important because I imagine there's a lot of people in the field, and I've been seeing it certainly in the chat, like folks experience this on a daily basis, especially if in the field. But is there anything you want to that we haven't gotten to that you want to talk about or you want to tell people?
The thing that comes to mind for me is I want to talk about the students, the therapy students and therapy trainees. Because that is a front of resistance. And we've seen the student intifadas and, the undergraduate students and, but the whatever the student intifada is going to be in psychotherapy training, I think is somewhere maybe for people like you and me to start thinking about how can we serve that population? Because they are I think about my professors who terminated me, and they have now been for 3 years training entire cohorts of psychotherapists to go out into the city with 60, 70,000 Arabs and ignore genocide. And so I get messages all the time from trainees, therapist trainees who are like, what do I do? How do I navigate this? And I guess I'm curious about your thoughts on that of like, what can we offer to the therapist trainees who are in those centers of power and going up against those professors and those supervisors?
Yes. Ourselves, honestly, this is what I mean. Like when we say we got you, it has to be really, we got you. And I really do have a policy of this. Like if folks are reaching out to me, I don't care how busy I am. I will make time because folks need to feel like they're not alone.
Yeah.
And I'm committed to a larger project of resistance. We have to make people be able to resist and not be afraid afterwards, because there are real concerns about jobs and all that. Now, you and I both, I think, have risked a lot. And I don't even see this as like a thing. I'm like, yeah, of course, because we're committed to a larger cause. But people are in different places and spaces of privilege in relationship to risks that they can take. So at the very least, I think we need to mean it when we say, when I got your back, it means I got your back. It means that you can write me at any time. It means you can contact me for consultation. It means that if, you're feeling fucked up because somebody is coercing you into something, that I'm here to reflect back to you that you don't need to compromise. If you need a recommendation for something so you don't have to rely on that white supremacist professor that makes you believe, or supervisor that makes you believe this is the only way you can go. That's why people don't take risks, because they're like, oh shit, this person has to write me a letter of recommendation, right?
Yep.
It means we activate all of our networks to make sure that people are supported, to make sure they have jobs after the fact, to make sure that we are creating the referral system so they don't have to be coerced by a system that will tell them, if you speak up, people won't send you patients, and therefore
Right.
you won't have a livelihood, which is a very real thing. We know that. People do use that as a threat.
They do. And people, and that's the thing, is I think people believe it, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
not everybody, but I think if you're a therapist trainee and you've never had clients of your own before,
Right.
you know, that like the fear mongering is very real.
Yes, of course. And it works because there's an entire infrastructure there and people have felt it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this is a time in which a different type, like the psychologies that you were talking about, are much more evident and clear to folks.
Yeah.
Part of that is divesting from institutions that suck the life out of us.
Yeah.
And working through and working out what are and I don't mean alternatives like this is a hyphen in connection to, no, I mean like literally life sources beyond those institutions whose only job is to keep us in our place.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot of experimental things that are happening out there that we need to like be really engaged in and work alongside people to be like, we're not going to settle for this shit anymore.
No. Yeah,
No.
absolutely. That mobilizing our networks, and really, I think we're just getting started.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, right now in Lebanon and Palestine and that there are people on the ground who are mobilizing for mutual aid efforts to help forcibly displaced people. They're engaging in mental health interventions. This is not a top-down approach. This is like we are responding to immediate needs of people. And we don't need a clinic to do that. We don't need, these entire institutions that will slow us down and bureaucratize what we're doing. We're saying like, what is the source of suffering? And what are the ways in which we immediately respond to that? We're also seeing that in Minneapolis with like medical pods that are popping up and comrades on the ground sort of really responding to the needs of people. If people can't go get care because ICE death squads are kidnapping people from clinics and hospitals, it's a demand on us to rethink and redo the way that we do clinical work. We don't just give that up. We say, what are other ways to do it? And our comrades in Minneapolis are really thinking through that very seriously.
Absolutely. There's so much to learn from them.
Yes.
So much to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Maria, thank you so much for spending morning time with me. Folks in the chat, thank you as always for joining us. Share this, come back to it, follow Maria. Maria, do you want to tell folks where, I feel like a lot of people in the chat already know you, but for people who watch after the fact, do you want to tell them where they can find you?
Yes. So I am on Instagram at 2 different accounts. There is at mar, MAR _unfiltered. That's my like main kind of page. And then my more recent up and coming page is at Maria Fakhouri Psychotherapy.
Yes. And those are both of those are in the passing it on to the feds. Yes. Being that would be the security assessment. Well, there are always infiltrators, I think. And that's why I think we actually have to be careful about what spaces we embed ourselves in, thinking that we're helping, like being at detention centers and assessing people. We know that that's being passed along to feds. So it's also being honest about that. But both of those accounts are in the show notes. And I want to offer a very outright apology to Maria because I misspelled her last name. She and I were talking about this beforehand, is that it's like the Lebanese and Palestinian spelling. And then apparently she also told me the US and Canada spelling. So her last name is actually with an I, not a Y. I will be fixing that. But for somebody whose name gets butchered all the time and the importance of names, I want to apologize to you publicly about that. And I will be rectifying it. And our names are so important because they're stolen from us from white supremacy. So
all good.
I just
Thank
want to
you.
say that. Yes, of course.
This
all
has
right,
been lovely.
folks.
Such a good time.
I know. Such a good time. Thank you, everybody. We'll do it again soon.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.